Hey, welcome to another morning coffee with Trevor. Your host, Trevor Matthews. And Monday morning, another beautiful day. Was able to smash a workout in, listening to an online course that I'm taking right now to develop my marketing skills, really to be able to promote my products to the industry a bit more and reach a bit more people. Good morning, everyone. And this is a big week. I talked to you guys about it yesterday. Heading down to Florida tomorrow. No, Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. Pretty excited about the event. There's lots of people that I want to meet and grab conversation with. You know what I mean? And just really start to network, like we talked about yesterday, a bit about networking and building those relationships with people with inside our industry. And building those key networks that will help you grow as a person, as well as help maybe your business grow or just your knowledge base grow. And having those connections is really going to help out. Victor, what's shaking this morning, brother? Very consistent you are. I like that.
Everything is okay, Trevor. How are you today?
Yeah, this is a great morning so far. Great morning so far. Got my workout in, got my coffee now. Prepped for this a little bit, so it's all good. It's all good.
Well, I still have to grab my one.
You should go do that. You should go do
Yeah,
that.
I will.
Yeah, no, so there's a lot going on. I'm working on a presentation to do for the event. So just trying to get it prepared. I only have an hour and a half, so I like talking. As you guys know, I really like talking and sharing my knowledge and getting conversations going. What I like the most is that those conversations. I can talk all day, which is fine if people are absorbing the information, but I really like getting conversations going to the point where we're all learning something. Because I built lots of different trainings, structured trainings, uh, trainings that are specifically for one topic, but I always find the best trainings go off in different paths. Always want to come back to that main point because somebody's coming for the training to learn specific, maybe technical details, maybe just information. But I believe like the stories and the conversations I have with either the technicians, the refrigeration professionals, the sales or project managers really make the difference in a training. Because it's easy to go and today and do on-demand trainings. It's easy to go do that or go watch YouTube videos. No problem to do that. But it's when you get into those specific conversations that really start telling the story about the journey that you're on, the project you're on, the service call you're on, the construction job you're on, whatever it is. And when you get in a training atmosphere, when you get into that, it leads into really good conversations that probably would not have happened if that question didn't come up or those people weren't at that training. Because this is why I feel it's so important for me when I go and attend trainings to ask questions and be there with that expert or that specialist. Because when you do a recorded training or on-demand training, yes, it can be great and can be laid out real well, but you don't get these side conversations a lot of the times. And that's what I really like. And no training I find is the same, which is good. You still get that base, that foundation of that main information, but these specific questions, because our the refrigeration industry is so dynamic and we work on so many different things. And yes, refrigeration base is exactly the same. The foundation is not going to change or has not changed. So when you pick up a book like uh, Dick Wert's book, Commercial Refrigeration for Air Conditioning Technicians, that foundation for refrigeration, I don't believe is going to change for a long time because refrigeration, thermodynamics, all those things will continue to be the same. Will things evolve inside refrigeration? Of course, things are going to become more efficient. We're going to get more electronics, going to get AI, uh, lots of different things, but that foundational base is going to be the same. So it's like a training that you're going to have that foundational base, but these conversation and these relationship builders and these experience builders, I call them, make trainings better for me. And so I really like that. So that I'm working on this presentation for this week, and I have, I think, an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes. And I always want to get more information out, but it's not the case. Getting more information out is not always better. So when you're teaching or educating somebody that's new to the industry, or even someone that's experienced, it's not about getting as much information to them as possible. It's about getting key concepts to them that they grasp and they can absorb and use that information. So it's like when I talk about CO2, it all depends is who's my audience. So if I'm talking to engineers about CO2, it's going to be a kind of a different conversation than if I'm talking with technicians. And then when I have a room full of mix of technicians, engineers, and sales professional, it's kind of it's a difficult, more difficult training or a learning atmosphere than if it's just technicians, salespeople, or engineers. But the way to make it more dynamic is getting conversations started that relate to all parties. And that's what in CO2, that's kind of what I do, because it is newer to a lot of people. And when you bring like things that they can relate to, it makes the training for me a bit more successful. It gets more people talking and chatting about it. And that's really where I excel in trainings, is trying to get those conversation going. So this week, like I said, I got about an hour and a half. So I'm trying to figure out the best strategy to give the most effective information to the attendees, as well as not overload them with a pile of information. Because there's always going to be someone with a lot more experience and someone with less experience, but you really want to be able to connect with all of them. That's what when I'm in my training, even talking with all of you right now, I want to connect with all of you in a way that really affects you, helps your day, helps your week, helps you grow. And so lots of things that I'm learning on, personal development, as well as adult education as well. I still do a lot of that, a lot of trying to understand how I can be a higher performer presenter, how I can understand the complex of students, of people that I'm talking to, because online doing this conversation right now, it's definitely more difficult when I'm doing this conversation, because I can see Victor a little bit, everybody else's screen's off, which is totally fine in this atmosphere. But when I'm doing a training, you'll see that there'll be lots of people with their videos off. And what I would be like, okay, pretend we're in a classroom right now. Pretend we're in a classroom. Would you have like something over your face, covering your face up? You know what I mean? Like, and I understand, well, I'm at home, and why do I need to have my camera? It does make a difference. So when you're in a training atmosphere, I highly recommend, when you're talking and you're doing something, you should have your camera on. Like, you should be there in the learning environment, not playing on your phone, doing your emails, because that's a lot of the times when people have their camera off. You're thinking of other things as well. Well, my camera's not on, I can pick my nose. I think you know what I mean. But you got to be aware that you got to feel like you're in that classroom atmosphere, or that I guess group setting. And I find that makes, for me, I can get bigger conversations going, I guess, with the people that have their cameras on. Most of the time, I've been noticing in a lot of trainings, because I've been doing this for a couple of years, with people who have cameras on, who are engaged, who are aware of their surroundings, because that's another thing. There's training etiquettes that you need to understand. And I know a lot of teachers and educators going through over the last year a lot of things where, they get their students, and there's people walking around with no clothes on in the thing. So you got to be aware, like, if you need to put a backdrop on, you need to do that. And I totally got off track of what I was talking about, but having that etiquette is very important. And so for me this week, I'm going to try to compile a lot of my great knowledge that I have into 3 or 4 solid points over the hour and a half, because we're going to be doing a teardown as well. So I'm going to probably in an hour try to get as many like these 3 or 4 points to make people think. That's one of the big things that I want out of my training is people to think a little bit more instead of just, running the same way each day, every day, is really get you thinking a little bit different. And when you think a little bit differently about the service job that you're on, the trainings that I am doing, whatever it is, the projects that you're working on, it definitely helps you succeed a bit more. And what I mean by that is like you come from maybe a different side of that project or that service call and not get pigeonholed. Because I found I've done that a lot in my trainings where I'm just talking and saying the same thing and just going off the slides. I remember when I used to do that just directly off the slides when I didn't know the material as well. And that's an issue with me because I didn't know that material. If it was on CO2, if it was on compressors, if it was just on basic refrigeration. And it's important to what you do, like if it's a service call or if you're doing a project, it's to build that awareness. And when you think outside a little bit, think a little bit differently, you're curious. This is a big one. If you're curious, that's where you dive in a little bit more. And then you can be more effective on your troubleshooting calls, on your design projects. Whew. It was 11 minutes talking straight.
Well, Trevor, I think there's a lot of validity to what you're saying. I remember, got me thinking about, my wife asked me not too long ago why I watch so much YouTube videos. I watch Bill or Chris Stevens or whatever, and you got me thinking. I told her, do you know it's like going on a service call with another service tech sometimes, and you get to see just a different approach, a different way of thinking about a call. And I think I like that the most. It's like, and I don't actually have to go do it, but I get to go see it just a different viewpoint. I think I learned from that. I enjoy that. And like I said to you about one training, one of my biggest regrets early on was not asking more questions. And I think that's part of it, is that it's one thing to learn something out of a book, but it's another thing to kind of experience it or to see it done, or someone explain to you what it is or what the thinking process is. So there's definitely agree with everything you just said.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, and if you disagree, that's okay. Let's have that conversation as well. I don't mind that. It helped me, that helps me grow. But I really feel that it is, you need to learn a lot of different from different areas and bring that into that training atmosphere you're going in. A lot of times what I see as well is when people are coming into a training setting, they're not prepared for the training itself. Like people think, oh, I'm just going to go to the training and that's that. I'll go to training and I'll learn, but you need to prepare. Like I prepare before I go to an event. I write down questions. I have a notebook that I'm going to bring and I'll write down questions that I'm like curious about. That if I don't know, if I'm going into a certain one where I'm going to talk and sit with an expert on refrigeration or on CO2, even though I've been spending years learning, but there's lots more to learn. And so I'll write down questions before. I'll have a notebook ready. And when I go into the trainings, as well as being a presenter in a training, I do the same thing. I write down what kind of questions should I ask differently than the last time I've been at a training from the questions that students ask me. To you just bring the vibe of that training up a little bit more. Have some icebreakers, but write down those questions, prepare, have a drink with me. So I have something ready. Don't have to get up and leave the first 10 minutes or feel uncomfortable because you'll sit there. You say you're going into a training and you don't go use the washroom before training starts. And after 10 minutes, you need to go to the washroom. And then the first break's another hour. You're sitting there uncomfortable. You can't really think. You're thinking about, I need to can we get a break or get up and go? I don't want to get up and go. In my situation, I would tell them, like, as an instructor, if you need to get up and go to facilities, do that during the training. You might miss a little bit, but it's better to come back and feel more aware and confident on what the instructors talking about. But getting back to the event this week, I'm real excited about it. If you're not going, I know that there's I can send you guys the link. I think it's like $22 for the virtual session. I highly recommend investing in that, or even telling people, apprentices, younger people, new people into the industry to get in there. It is more on the HVAC side, commercial HVAC and residential HVAC side. But Brian's been, over the last few years, is starting to get more and more of the refrigeration side in there. So we got a bunch. Chris Stevens is going to be there talking about refrigeration stuff. Advanced Refrigeration Podcast, Brett and Kevin. And I'll be there talking about compressors too. I talk more. I try to keep it on the refrigeration side, but I talk about HVAC and commercial HVAC compressors as well. Try to make it relate, depending on who's the audience, right? You always want to try to relate with the audience themselves. And sometimes it's kind of hard when you don't have anyone answering back or answering those questions. So yeah, I'm working on that. It should be done. Last night I was working on the quiz for it as well, because my plan is to really present some material, have some people think about different problems in compressor related issues, troubleshooting system related issues, and then have a quiz that they can do to test that knowledge. And I think testing the knowledge, testing the competency is so important in our technical industry. And I'm trying to figure out the best ways to do it as well. Like it's going to be easy, just click a link and then they can answer the 10 questions. But it's just making sure that it relates, like all the material I talk about, those 10 questions relate to what I talked about. Because it's if it doesn't flow right, people will be set off from it, like it put off, I guess, from it. Because if I'm talking about one thing and all of a sudden the questions don't relate to what I'm talking about, it can be frustrating. And this is things that I've learned over time from doing all these different trainings. Well, Bill, thank you very much for, listening, not turning your camera on while you're in the shower. I appreciate that. I'm sure everybody else appreciates that as well. Maybe not everybody, but. So thanks. That's a good way. And you're good at texting or chatting while you're in the shower, Bill. So hands down to you, bud. Hands down to you. So that's what I'm working on this week. I got a couple of other good meetings with one big company that hopefully I get to talk with some of the right people. It's always those introductory conversations, just like if you're going into an interview, starting a new job, see a new prospect, you're in the sales, that first conversation, you can be a bit nervous at it. For sure, I got a plan for different meetings. And it makes me feel more confident when I go into those meetings and I kind of have a plan. Does it always go the right direction? But when you plan these things out, and once again, plan, and you have some questions, it makes it easier for you. You feel a little bit more prepared. So even if you don't ask those questions, you feel more prepared. Well, I do anyway. And if I don't get to the questions, I can figure out why I didn't ask those questions. So right now, I am in development of some online courses, which I am excited about, because bringing different information to different people around the world is important to me. And what I'm trying to learn, like I understand the dynamics of North America and the needs, a lot of the needs that are here from different businesses that I talk to. I don't know globally if the needs are all the same, because I was on a world refrigeration panel last year for World Refrigeration Day, and the needs that are in Asia seem to be a lot different than the needs that are in North America, that are different than the needs that are in Europe. I'm trying to figure out, and if you guys, any of you know, as how I can be more effective to help those regions as well. I know there's, first of all, there's the languages, it can be different, but English is a pretty big prominent language globally. And a lot of countries speak English. And then I know the units are a bit different. You know, you get Celsius and bar, but that's something that's very easy to learn, and you can use different calculators to figure it out. And over time, you can think about it. The big thing is to learn how to think about it and not have to use the calculator. That's one of the things that I used to think, well, why do I need to learn an equation when I can just jump on Google or jump on a calculator? But when you can do it in your head and you think the other way, it's like when you talk to someone that can speak a different language, and you can tell the difference where somebody understands a language so much they think in that language when they're talking or speaking it, and when they talk the other language they think in that language. That's something that's very difficult to do when I talk and ask people that speak multiple languages. I did used to speak a bit of French because I'm from the east coast of Canada, but I haven't been practicing. And so that's the thing about understanding how to use equations and stuff. If you can think about it, okay, well, 1 bar equals 14.5 psi, you know what I mean? So it just understand that atmospheric pressure. So I guess I'm not going anywhere with that, but understanding those units. So I'm trying to figure out what type of training that does Asia need, what type of training does Europe need, what type of training does, say, India or Africa needs, because it is different. Some are going to need more. Adrian, go ahead.
Yeah, how's it, guys? My name is Adrian, and I'm sitting in sunny South Africa. It's not quite breakfast for us. It's 10 to 2 in the afternoon now. So, yeah, we don't have late afternoon showers. Coming down to the one of the main reasons why I've decided to join your breakfast chat is to see what's going on in the other sides of the world. And I'm sort of like picking up that I think we all have the same problem. I've been involved with CO2 refrigeration for about 11, 12 years now.
Wow.
We installed our first supermarket plant back in 2011, and it's grown ever since. So our biggest problem is getting technicians, you know, who first of all aren't so scared that they don't want to listen to you talk about CO2 and just run away, to actually getting people that are good and who can handle basic refrigeration. And what I've found is even your guys that are really good, or who think they are really good, who've been around for a couple of years, 15, 20 years, you become very complacent in Freon. And the thing with CO2 is you cannot be complacent. You can't take that chance because A, your pressures are much higher. You have additional components in the system. At the end of the day, refrigeration is a science and the rules of nature remain the same. So the principle is the same. It's just you need to work safely, and getting it into the guys' heads to work safely and to do it right, you know, pull a proper vacuum. If you open up a system, pull a vacuum, get that air out. Use your gauges. Follow the manuals, read the manuals. The guys are so clever they don't even have to read a manual. The first thing that flies out of the box when you buy a new component is the manual. And that's the problem that I seem to find in our country, in Africa, is that basic understanding of refrigeration. And if you got that, doesn't matter what plant you work on, it can be the biggest CO2 plant. And I mean, I've worked on 4.5 kilowatt of megawatts of refrigeration. We bought a massive plant here in Durban. I think I was just over 5 kilowatts, so megawatts, sorry. So, you know, the principle is the same, and the guys just need to work careful. And I see you doing some courses now. I think you're doing one called Fundamentals of Refrigeration. And I think that's a good point to start, because the guys forget the basics. And you
Yeah.
jump into a CO2 plant and you make a mistake. And it's like that.
Yeah, you blow a
CO2 is
whole
very-
charge.
Yeah. When that discharge relief valve goes on the head of that compressor, it's on the bottom of your rack. It's exactly the same height as where your family jewels are, and you're in trouble. But
Yeah.
without even
Yep.
knowing it, the plant room is full of smoke, and you disorientated and you lost. And,
Yeah.
and it actually happened that easy. And I don't know, because that happened to me a couple of years ago. Because
Oh,
you think
sorry.
you're so smart and you don't follow the rules of refrigeration.
And that's one of the big things. I'm really glad you brought that up. It's like, and for even me, like before I did my stint at Copeland, like I thought I've understood compressors, and CO2 is a little bit different, but I needed to go back to the basics, even of that, after doing 10 years in the field, because I got complacent and I just got into my ways of doing things. And with CO2, you can't cut any corners. You can't do the complacency, just like you said, you can't be complacent on it, because you'll run into a massive amount of issues. And I've seen it with so many different jobs. And like you said, technicians that have 10, 12 years in the field, and they're really good at what they're doing at that point with Freon, but there's a lot of areas that you can, not do it the right way and still get away with it working. Will the system still last the length of life? No, because it doesn't. Pulling that evacuation for 15 or 20 minutes, okay, well, I don't have time because my customer's on my back and I need this up and running. You don't get away with that with CO2. You need to take the time to do that. And this is something that I'm trying to talk about with business owners as well, because some of them don't understand. Oh, this is my best guy. He's been here for 12 years. He knows everything that's going on. He doesn't need the training. Well, he still needs to do it. When's the last time you've been at training? I've been doing trainings now. And I ask them one of the first questions when we meet, when did you take your last refrigeration training? They're like, I haven't. I've been working at this company for 12 years. And after I finished school, I haven't been to a training since. So how do you forget things I forget lots of things. I do trainings all the time, and I do repeat trainings, and I still forget stuff. It's just, there's just so much information out there. So it's really important. I like some of the things that he said, getting back to that basic of refrigeration for CO2. And that's one of the important things of when I start a course and I say to a founder or an owner, here's my supermarket layout, or here's my compressor layout, or here's my CO2 course layout. And they're like, well, we don't really need the fundamentals. We need to get into more advanced stuff. We need to get into that advanced stuff. But then when I start the training and I'm going through the basics, like I'm challenged because I'm like surprised that the level, because I do a lot of my trainings are people that are 4 or 5 years in the industry up to like 15 years in the industry. That's kind of the range. And then when I start asking these basic refrigeration questions, not that they didn't know it, it's just at this point they haven't talked about it in 10 years, 7 years, never really thought of it. They just got in their ways and they just do it the way they're doing it and get by, just like you said. And it's important to really understand those basics. I do basics and fundamentals all the time training, and I'm still learning. I still learn stuff every time I do it. And you don't want to be complacent with CO2, because you blow a charge, you could hurt yourself, could hurt somebody else, especially on the big plants like 5 megawatts. Holy man, that's a big system. That is a big system. So impressive. So I'd love to have more conversations with you about it to see maybe how I can help in your area develop some of the technician skills, because it's not only the technical side too. I think it's confidence, because it's like you can be very overwhelmed with CO2 because there's like you said, there's all these different electronics, different components, and it's easy to get overwhelmed because you're just used to doing, I've been working on 404 forever. It's easy. Like, I'll just shut the system off. No big deal. I got time. I can go have a coffee. I can come back and, start working on the system. Well, that doesn't work with CO2. You can't trap it. You shut it off, all of a sudden the room starts to warm up, the pressure skyrocket very quickly, and then you can start relieving the gas out, And these are the different things that you don't want to be complacent. And I think that's what happened in our industry. Just over time, it's like, okay, well, let's do it this way because we don't have much time. This is how you do it properly. Talking to the younger person, this is how you would do it properly, but I don't have time we don't have time to do it because we're in a tight schedule and we need to get this up and running before they lose product. So let's just blow off the charge. You can't do that. You can't just blow off the charge on say a Freon system or a 404A system. CO2 is a little bit different because it's a natural refrigerant. You can get away with doing that, but that's the only thing that one of the only things that you need to be aware of. And even at that point, you need to be aware of that as well. But I really like that conversation. I want to keep going with that because I myself personally, I still need to learn the fundamentals even more, the thermodynamics, and that I think that's where I'm getting better. To be honest, like I'm teaching this stuff all the time, but I'm getting back to the basics and fundamentals and really understanding that because that doesn't change. That stuff doesn't change, but you still need to review it and update yourself and be like, if I haven't done this in a long time, it's gonna help me grow as a refrigeration professional. Lalo says, mastering the basic and fundamental principles is key. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it takes time to learn that. Even though if you read it, and you did it, I'm still learning on it. I'm still learning on it. Anybody else have any questions before we jump off here? Victor.
Trevor, like they say in Dutch, they have a saying, bijna goed is niet goed. That means that almost good is not good. So
yes, I like that one. I like that one.
Yes, and concerning vacuum, there's no time tied to it. You have to measure vacuum with a micron gauge. There's nothing around that. So you have to do it like it's supposed to be. If you don't do it, you're causing problem to the system.
Yeah. And the thing is, you need to understand how to do it properly as well. Like I used to think, oh, you just throw a vac pump on and you just pull it down and you're fine. Well, no, there's a specific way to do it faster.
Yeah, but even so, if you're pulling a vacuum and you don't check it, just put it on and leave it on. Don't check it. If you have leaks, you're bringing more air in the system. It's going to be more trouble to get it out, and especially with POE oil.
Oh yeah, and I said this a few last week, I think too. I was training a team, and there was an apprentice that's just working on I think second or third year, smart little kid that wants to learn, but he's working on a construction site now. And he says that foreman who's 14, 15 years, because he asked me the question in training, he's testing the lines, the refrigeration lines, by pulling them into a vacuum and see if the vacuum holds on those lines. You want to get that moisture out of there. You don't want to pull the moisture in and leave it in there. You pressure test and you find the leaks and then you pull the evacuation. So he was like, well, I wanted to ask the question because I'm like, this is a great question to ask and good conversation to have because that's not the way you should be doing it. So it's just all these different things that you learn. And I highly recommend when I really start to be able to pull better evacuations, you got bigger hose, you got no depressors in the lines, you plug directly to the system, don't try to pull through the gauges, you know what I mean? All these little different tips is going to speed it up, have a bigger pump if you need it on a bigger system. I know there's lots of great videos out there, but it's also trying it differently, changing that vac pump oil, but trying it differently and seeing if it works, what works for you. Because there's some people that do triple evacuation and say, this is what I use and this is the way it works. And then some other people don't do triple evacuations. Well, it all depends on the system, how long you want to pull down, how well you purge those lines. There's so many different aspects of it. And talking about pulling evacuation, I think is something that really needs to be talked about more. Well, I pulled evacuation, it's good. But once again, I've done so many teardowns over the years and inspected compressors that, you know, were in 4 or 5 years in this, in the system, and they came back, when I worked at Copeland, they came back and they failed because of improper installation. You know, and maybe I'm assuming a little bit, but when they're full of copper plating, there's only a couple ways that can happen. You know, improper installation where they didn't pull a proper evacuation, and over time that acid started, because it doesn't have to start right away. It could happen in 2 weeks, but it could happen in 2 or 3 years, where it just takes that time to build the acid because the system is closed and it just works over time. Or you have a leak in the system and the system keeps running where it sucks in moisture, and it doesn't, when someone just goes back and just adds charge, doesn't pull it out, doesn't change the filters, doesn't pull a new evacuation, and just adds charge because it was leak, you know, or fix that little leak, or tighten up a flare, and then just adds gas to it. And then the compressor, you're not doing it a service because now there's moisture in that system. Awesome. Hand grenades and horseshoes is the closest you're going to get. Excellent. I use Appian Speed Y and Speed R hose kits for recovery and evacuation. Great investment. Yes, 100%. And then things and tools, we could do a whole conversation, many conversations on the proper tools to have. And, you know, when you're starting out and you're new, you don't, you know, I didn't have the proper tools. I went to the local hardware store and bought my tools. I couldn't afford real tools. But over time, start to make money, invested it in the proper tools to really increase my game in troubleshooting, reduce my time, get home earlier because I have the proper tools to help me out to speed up my process of troubleshooting, evacuation, charging, all that stuff. So once again, fantastic. Thanks so much for hanging out this morning, and I will see you again tomorrow, and let's get a conversation going. See you soon.